What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We are back. We did a little defensive line preview last week. We went really deep into the weeds of the defensive line class. And today we're going to be talking scouting, combine, and all of those things. Pretty much just having like a genuine conversation as we like to do. No real plan, no real scripts, just two dudes talking football. And that other dude talking football with me. I'm not down here talking by myself. That guy is Scott Bischoff. Scott, my man, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. Good. We're recording in the basement. First time we've done it in the basement. So pretty exciting. I got 3 TVs up right now. Got a lot happening in front of me.
Yeah, you got a nice little setup rolling there.
Yeah, nice. Thanks. Really looking forward to it as it continues to come together and those types of things. But really looking forward to this week, which is why we're here on the Detroit Lions podcast, talking NFL Combine and just having this conversation, looking at quarterbacks and running backs and all the fancy tools that are going to be going. We do know Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, these guys will not be throwing at the Combine. Jackson Dart will be throwing. Quinn Ewers, I think, is going to be throwing. Jalen Milroe should throw. So we should see some guys throwing the football around. I don't think there's really any reason to talk about quarterbacks. We kind of nipped that in the butt a few weeks back. I don't think there's a guy on the board that the Lions maybe have any interest in. Again, maybe it happens, but I don't think it's going to happen. So,
if they do, it'll make some sense when it does happen. And there are some later guys who are, like Will Howard's interesting, right? Like Riley Leonard could be. I'm talking later.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think of Quinn Ewers. I don't think I like him very much from an NFL standpoint, but
I'm with you. I look at Quinn and I'm like, they're like he's got a very natural release. The ball is quick out of his hands, but then there's times where I'm watching him and I'm like, what are you doing? Like you're panicking in the pocket, you're drifting, you're flying around and just forcing throws and trying to rip it like your Uncle Rico throwing over some mountains here. And it's like, what do you do? Like, settle down, partner. You got Matt Golden, you got Isaiah Bond, you got some weapons here.
Yeah, and last year it should have been a tell for us last year. I think I made this smart ass comment last year on one of the shows I was doing about after the Combine, I was lower on Ewers than I could possibly ever have been. Looking at Adonai Mitchell run and then Worthy runs 4-2-1 and looking back at their film, how often they would be underthrown.
Yeah.
And he's just, that's kind of the thing with him is I don't think he throws a real, he doesn't throw a good deep ball. And I think there's a level of not necessarily understanding leverage where the safe place to put the ball is. So a lot of stuff gets underthrown or seriously overthrown. So,
right.
I'm with you. I mean, the quarterback thing is the quarterback thing. It's always fun to watch the quarterbacks and have all that conversation. But this is just not a great year to do it. It would have been the juxtaposition of Cam Ward's arm strength to Shedeur Sanders would have been a fascinating conversation.
Yes.
And it would have been like, we would have all seen it like, wow, Cam Ward's got a big arm.
Yep.
Big. Shedeur is more a rhythm timing, keep you in the structure of your offense quarterback. So I'm not saying that limits him and, as a quarterback, it's just they're very different.
Right.
Very different skill sets. But there's going to be some really fast guys. So there's like we can get through this. There are certain positions where some of these drills just don't really matter all that much. Like, do you care what a defensive tackle runs the 40 in? Really?
Not really. I mean, if he's running it in like 6 seconds, I got probably a little problem with that. But
yeah, but like if they're all acceptable range speeds, fine.
Yeah,
but I really like that 10-yard split. I think that matters, right? And then the jumping stuff where you can say, all right, that dude's got some juice in his legs. He could, there's some explosiveness there, that kind of stuff. So that's where, like, some of this stuff is not all that relevant to some things. For the interior offensive lineman, the short shuttle is a huge thing. I think the number is 4.49. If an interior O lineman plays to any level of football and cracks that 4.49 short shuttle, if he beats that score, draft him. Right. I'm not saying overdraft him, but draft him, because there's a good chance he's going to work out. Mm-hmm. So that's one for the O-line where it's important. Unfortunately, they don't really show those on TV or much, and it always takes like a day or two to get those numbers.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't show it. Like, I wonder, and I know it's boring, but like, you give all this coverage to so much other stuff in sports. Why not on this too? Like, you show the 40-yard dash, you show some of the vertical jump stuff, but just show it all. Like, give me a station that's going to give me all of it. Like, whether it's ESPN Plus or NFL Plus, you got all these premium things that you can subscribe to and pay for now. Why not give me the access to that stuff when I pay for it?
I would love to watch it. It would be great.
Because I would like to see that player, how he moves laterally and how does he flip his hips and all that. But I can't really gauge it all the time on, I can on film, but I can't when I'm watching the combine and you go to a commercial or you flash to the guy sitting in the booth. I don't care what those guys are talking about. I care about what's going on the field.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And there are, for us guys, there are things that we're paying attention to. Obviously the 40 matters for running backs and receivers. It matters for tight ends. Sometimes the little agility stuff matters more for tight ends than you think.
Yeah.
For defensive players, obviously, the 10-yard split's a big deal, and Hori is important for a lot of the defenders. But some of that explosive stuff matters. The change of direction stuff is really critical. You can see guys who can bend and guys who struggle in some ways. I think I go back to like the DK Metcalf draft year where everybody's all freaked out about his lack of ability to move laterally. And it's like, well, that's what he looks like. He's a linear monster who is super huge. He's a huge guy, super fast. I think he fell a little bit simply because he doesn't move side to side all that great. Doesn't change directions great, but
that's how I feel about TCU receiver Savion Williams. I'm super intrigued by him because he's listed at 6'5", 220, 225. So you're talking prototypical X receiver, got the linear speed, can get vertical.
Fast as can be, yeah.
Fast as can be, versatile as all can be. He can play in the backfield. He can play anywhere on the field. And then I watch him beat a guy vertically down the field. He's wide open by a mile, and he drops the ball. He's almost got a 12% drop rate in 2024. Like, that's bad. And I'm just like, and I hate scouting the helmet, but I'm like, is this Quentin Johnston all over again? He's not going to give me any juice laterally. He can win vertically when he could set separation. Yeah. And he's just going to drop the ball on me. Like, I struggle with that guy. And I just wonder, is he going to be a guy later this week that blows up at the combine with a 4.35 or something like that? And then next thing you know, it's game over because he can't catch the football. And, I don't know. Another guy, though, just at receiver, just throwing out fast guys and things like that. I'm Georgia receiver Arian Smith. What's he going to run? Because he ran a 10.1 100-meter dash in high school.
My guess is he's going to get close to Worthy.
You might beat him at 10.1.
Yeah. Like, just for some perspective there, like, I think Jalen Waddle ran like a 10.6.7, right? I didn't want to say Tyreek Hill's in the high 10.3s.
Yeah.
So you're talking like crazy fast. Crazy fast. I think he will run in the low to mid 4.2s, if not whatever, beat him. It's funny because you mentioned this guy earlier, and it's funny. I really like Matthew Gold. I love his game. I think he probably should be in consideration to be a player picked after, say, pick 20 in that range.
Mm-hmm.
I like his game a lot. And I think he's plenty fast enough, and he's quick, fast, all that stuff. And then there are moments on his film where you see Isaiah Bond run like next to him, and I think, okay, that guy's fast.
Yeah.
Like Golden's fast. He'll be like a 4.5 guy. Well, I'm guessing maybe a little more, or a little faster. But I think Bond is gonna be really fast, and it wouldn't surprise me because transferring from Alabama, those dudes are always like kind of quick, Yeah, I could see him being a 4.3 guy at his size. It'll be interesting to see where he comes in. I don't know that we're going to see Tet run, although I really want to see him run.
I do too.
Like he's slipping in some mock drafts. I don't totally know why.
If like the draft was today, if you could put a ranking out there, is that your number one receiver?
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be close for me.
Okay.
But understand that's just for me, and I'm not making a pick for a team in a city, so it's easy to say it. I just think that he runs routes with precision and all the things that you want to see. I don't see a slow guy at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's quick enough, fast enough, and all that stuff where if he did run at 6'5" and 215 or whatever he's going to be, if he ran 4.5, somewhere around the 4.5 to 4.55 range, I think he would be, he should be in range to go just about anywhere in the first round. Just because a lot of the other receivers are small slot types where, but yeah, I mean, for me, he would be for sure. I love his game. Didn't get a lot of good quarterback play last year, so there was some down stuff there. Same can be said for Luther Burden. They didn't really get much out of the quarterback last year.
He's getting so overthought. It is crazy. I
know I think people have just like as they get into this is going to sound like a knock. I don't mean it to, but it is a little, I suppose. But if their first exposure to him is this year's film with all of the gadget stuff and the screens and the short yardage stuff, I can understand them thinking, well, he's limited. He's not going to be able to do a bunch of stuff at the NFL level. And it's like, go back a year where there was a lot more to his game and understand that maybe the Missouri offense really, really limited him.
Right.
That dude is explosive.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect him to run really fast. One of the bummers is we're not going to see the 3 top tight ends in this class run. And we were talking about it off air just for a minute. I really wanted to see, we're going to go inside the mind here for just a second. I wanted to see Tyler Warren run. It's blank in there. I wanted to see Tyler Warren run because when I watch him, he doesn't look fast. He doesn't look like a super explosive guy. But I also know that he's not slow because he's running away from defenses. And there are times when he is covered by, a safety or whatever, and he's he's fine. So I know he's not slow. So I'm not trying to say that he's slow. I would have loved to have seen the number. And the only way that I can describe it is like, remember in the middle of Gronk's career where he would catch a pass and you would think, dude, how slow are you? And then you look at the screen and he's running away
from everybody. Yeah.
And I think it's one of those things where his stride is really long and it's kind of a loping sort of longer stride where there's not a lot of foot repetition happening there. So a little bit of, just I wanted to confirm, because I think for most people, he's probably going to be tight end 1. But watching Colston Loveland run and move is a whole different thing. Watching Elijah Arroyo run it just looks different. But
same thing with Harold Fannin out of Bowling Green. He's a guy that if you get him up the seam, he's as dangerous as anybody in the class. And there's times where laterally he looks a little stiff, a little limited. And when you watch him block in line and those types of things, it's not necessarily what you want, but he's got an opportunity with those three guys not competing.
Yeah.
To really put on a show. And
he does. Jason Taylor from LSU does too. He's got NFL bloodlines. It'll be really interesting to see what happens there.
I'm glad you mentioned.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm glad you mentioned the top receivers, because I didn't even think of McMillan running and what that all looks like, and then thinking of Luther Burden, and like I was thinking about that going into the show of like how Burden is being pushed out of first round mock drafts and things like that, and really isn't getting that respect part of what he's done in college. Like, he was super productive, like you said. And I think of today's game, like, in what world, if you look back at previous drafts of, Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle and Garrett Wilson, all these top receivers, how are we looking at players like Tet McMillan and Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka? How can you look at these guys and be like, yeah, no, they're not first round players? Like, it just kind of blows my mind. Like, I think there's a very good possibility that all three of these guys could be top 20 picks when we get into April. So I find it really interesting. And I look at Luther Burden and I'm like, okay, if he runs well and he tests well, this is a guy that's probably going to solidify as a top 15 pick, 20 pick. And like, I start thinking of like scenarios of where he could end up and how fun that would be for him and just for us as fans. Cause it's not like he's, 5'11", $180. He's 5'11", 205. Like, and he's crazy explosive. He's a little thin, but he scoots, man. So I'm just glad you brought that up, and I wanted to circle back to it. But what were you going to ask?
So there's other stuff too that's interesting, that's kind of off the charts, kind of draft nerdy, but like, I'm really curious to see what Will Campbell's arm length is, because it's really, that single measurement, as crazy as it sounds, might guide us as far as the first 10 picks in the draft go.
Yeah. And
if that number comes back like sub 33 and a quarter kind of thing, dude, all bets are off. I don't know who New England takes. I have no idea where he goes. Does he get automatically penciled in as a guard?
Right.
If he does, the only true left tackle, I think, is Simmons from Ohio State, who tore his ACL. I think he tore his ACL. And then there's a bunch of like, is Kellen Banks a left tackle?
Right.
He played left tackle at a good level at Texas, but like, I don't know, so
the same could be said about Donovan Jackson, right? Like, I'm super intrigued by him. And I know we've talked about him last week, but he's only listed at 6'4", but it's like, that's a guy that, as we look at defensive linemen, we talked a ton last week, ton of tweeners, guys that, Shamar Stewart could play as probably a dominant 3-tech in the NFL, probably more of a 4-eye 5 type deal. Same thing with like Jordan Birch, a bunch of guys that can just kind of float between. You look at a guy like Donovan Jackson, it's like, well, he might be able to play left tackle or right tackle in a pinch. And it wouldn't surprise me if that's what he ends up doing. Like, when Taylor Decker was coming out, I thought he was a guard. Yeah. I thought he was going to be a guard. And I look at Donovan Jackson and I'm like, he might end up being a tackle, like, in a pretty good one.
Whoever drafts him is going to get a really, really good football player with some versatility and some upside, as far as like, you don't know what he's going to end up being, but he's a really good football player. The
Will Campbell thing is interesting too. Like you mentioned, like the arm length is obviously very important, but when you watch his tape, like, it's hard to say that he's not one of the most consistent players in the draft. And it is like, he's going to grade out high, I think. And I get like position and value and all of that, but I look at him as just, to me, through the process from scouting this, in the summer to now, he looks, oh my God, Michigan State just hit a buzzer beater. Sorry. 50.
It's the season, buddy.
58-55. That was awesome. But he looks like one of the 5 best players in the draft to me. And I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to come in sub 34-inch arms, but if it's like 33 and like 7/8, we're good. 33 and a half, I think we're still good.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think anything in there is cool. The nice thing about him is Brandon Thorne interviewed him and did a long. Brandon Thorne on Twitter has some videos with him talking out his process and the things that he that he already understands. And as an O-line guy, it's like, this dude gets it.
Yeah.
Like he really does. So I think he's advanced as far as understanding offensive line play. And if the limitations are that he's got short arms, then you got to look at their feet. And if they move their feet, I think the arm length can be mitigated a little. So, we'll see. But it's going to be, he is going to be one of those, it is going to be something that to monitor as far as the first 10 picks go, because, everybody wants tackles. And if the two tackles, meaning Banks and Campbell, are going to be thought of as guards, they're going to fall. Somebody has to replace those guys in the top 10. The other thing that happened today was really cool. Was I don't know if you saw Nick Scorton talking about the difference between his experience and the difference between playing at Purdue and playing at Texas A&M. And how so at Purdue they just allowed him to rush and attack and go, and at Texas A&M he said it's a lot more complex. And there's a lot more going on than just that. And it's like, okay, so, last week, I feel like I was I'm probably lower on him than consensus because I think he's Josh Pascal light. But if we look at both of the A&M guys, Shamar Stewart and Nick Scorton, and you think, all right, these guys have been sort of held back a touch by the scheme at Texas A&M. And maybe going forward, they are more productive.
Yeah.
And they can attack more kind of stuff. It just leads me to think like, better stuff about both of those guys. Interesting, kind of stuff. And then I don't know if you saw what Ezeraku said today.
Was it about his ghost move?
No. He was talking about, let's see. Our buddy Jeff Risdon, fellow Detroit Lions podcaster, tweeted this. And if there's no more Dan Campbell-y sounding dude than Ezeraku. Let me get it real quick. I'll be there in a second.
While you were saying that, I was going to say, looking at the difference of what Scorton was saying from one program to the other, it just goes to show schematically, we don't always know what these guys are being asked to do. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
yeah, same thing with Ole Miss. Like we feel like Ole Miss is asking their guys to read and react and not be aggressive. Same thing. Like, so if you take the shackles off these guys, it's a terrible phrase. I'm not going to say that anymore. If you take the
limitation,
caution, which they play with, or trepidation, or whatever it is,
to remove the caution tape.
Yes, and just let them go. They could be different guys, right? Ezeraku says, so this is Jeff, not paraphrasing. There are some quotes in here. He says he's absolutely cut from Lions cloth. I want to destruct a quarterback. There were loads of detailed answers about film study and breaking down opposing blockers to attack them differently with his pass rush package. He initiated film study groups with the O-line to learn from them. You'd better believe Dan Campbell loves that type of football character and initiative. Makes me very warm and fuzzy about Ezeraku.
Look, man, anything is possible when it comes to who the Lions are going to consider in this process. And I know you know that because we know that they're going to interview these guys separately. And newsflash for everybody, they're going to talk to almost every player. Oh, so when you ask them, hey, did you talk to this team? You should already know the answer. The answer is yes. It's going to be an automatic yes every single time. It's just what it is. So if you want to get a little bit more detailed in maybe what you talked about, that might be a better question to ask when you're at the combine or whatever, but I digress.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show, like, we don't know who they're really high on and who they're not really high on. And like, you look at Mel Kiper's recent mock draft. He had that UCLA kid, the pass rusher.
Yeah.
I can't say his name, but
I don't know how to either.
Olafemi Oladipo or something like that. I don't know. I'm terrible with names.
Yep.
But
I got you. That was a name kind of out of nowhere-ish.
But dude, I watched 3 games yesterday. I couldn't put the film down. And I'm like,
what'd you think?
I look at him and I'm like, I really want to see what his 10-yard split is because he's not overly explosive off the football.
Yes.
I'm very curious what the 3-cone drill is because he's not exceptionally fluid. But when you think of power rusher, a guy that is shredded, 6'3", 261 is what he was at the Senior Bowl. It's exactly in that like threshold of what they're looking for as far as maybe a Sam, a guy that could play as a 5. He can even play some off-ball stuff. Like, he's really interesting to me. And I think he's a guy that when you look at hands, he's not there yet with refinement and placement. His hands hit high.
Yeah, he was an off-ball linebacker convert to D-end, right?
Yeah, like in the middle of the season. And, you know, you watch him like against Indiana, he's playing, you know, in a 20 over the A and B gap and stuff like that over the guard and reading the A and B gap. And then you go to the next game and he's playing as a tilt 7, standing up or bumping inside to play a 4-eye. So he's super interesting to me. And I'm like, if I was to grade him, he wouldn't get a first-round grade. I don't even know if he'd really get a second-round grade. But like the Lions don't really care what the grades are if they care about what fits them. And I think that's what this combine is all about for teams like the Lions and every team. They don't care what the speed and the numbers necessarily are. Some teams are going to get caught up on that. But yeah, they care about, specifically the Lions, our team that we talk about. This is the team that when they sit you down in for an interview, they're trying to see how you tick and how you would tick in our room. And I'm super intrigued by that. And he was a name that I meant to bring up a little bit earlier. So I'm glad I was able to talk about him because I
got to get to the film with him because I've heard, I mean, I know you liked him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enough to, push me to want to watch him. Obviously, we think edge is going to be a place they go to maybe twice in this draft. So I think we're going to spend a lot of time on the edge. But like, who do you think is going to be the fastest guy here? Just who's going to run? Like, who do you think runs super fast?
I would have to go with Arian Smith. I think through all my track and field numbers that I've been able to process, I think he's the one that I came across as the fastest for the 100-meter dash at 10.10 seconds. I don't know if I can find anybody faster. Maybe
I think he is him, Isaiah Bond, right? I think that he could get there. There is the only other dude I think that could crack 4.3 is the Iowa State corner.
Darian Boone?
Yes. Yeah. I think he could maybe, he could be like 4.28, 4.3 range. Maybe I'm overselling him a little. He's fast. He's super fast. But then I think Alfred Blue could be pretty fast.
I'm so intrigued with him because you mean Jaden Blue.
Yeah. Alfred Blue might have played 15, 20 years ago in a different lifetime.
I've done it a bunch with him. But he's interesting because for as good as of a play caller Steve Sarkisian is, he completely misused the hell out of him at times. And the same thing can be said about Auburn running back Jarquez Hunter, who I think I texted you earlier this week about.
Yeah.
You talk about a tone setter. Man, that guy can set the tone. He's not overly fast. He's not overly elusive, but he can catch passes out of the backfield. Kind of reminds me of Ray Davis from last year. I'm curious what he tests. And I think he's a guy that's going to end up being gone by the 4th round. So like if you're doing mock drafts and you're getting him at like pick 200, newsflash, I don't think he's going to be there.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a couple guys like that. One guy, Alabama safety, Malachi Moore. I love his tape. And I can't believe people are more so talking about the South Carolina kid. And then you got Notre Dame's Xavier Watt. A lot of people are talking about
Emin Worry.
Yeah.
Dude, we got to have a long talk about Emin Worry.
We can do safeties next week. We'll do that.
Okay.
We'll get deep into that. But Malachi Moore from Alabama is a guy that I would put on everybody's radar. I'm fingers crossed that he tests really well this weekend, because if he does, I don't see how in any world he's not a top 50, top 60 type player. He's just so damn physical.
He is, and he's got a little ball hawk in him, right? And he's got that Alabama sort of I think he was the captain of their defense in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I hope I'm not making that up, but I think I read that, and like that tells you a lot, right? Like, and you sent me some clips of him, and it's like, yeah, that dude knows where the ball's going. Yeah, it's impressive. I don't think he's a great tackler, but as far as being like ball hockey, kind of
just getting his nose in there.
Yeah, like Brian Branch was a very physical football player.
Yeah.
I don't think Moore is that guy.
Right.
But from a coverage concept, I think they're similar athletes with similar skills from a coverage standpoint.
Yeah.
And then the ball skills come in, and then the ball skills really matter.
Right.
One of the things that was going to be a bummer, because I think this is where Tet would have been a freak show, is the jumping.
Yeah.
He's going to jump out of the jump.
Yep.
There are times when he jumps and it's just like, dude is just elevating still. It's going to be, last one for me. I think that I want to discuss is Kenneth Grant.
Okay.
If we remember back to the Jordan Davis combine, big, huge, heavy dude ran. I don't remember exactly what he ran. Was it 4.8, 4.7, something like that?
4.76, if I remember right.
And I think Grant is going to be in and around that 4.8 range. They have similar production. They're very similar games, all that stuff. And after Davis went off, he really rose in the process.
Yeah.
Now, and for you and I, we don't totally know why, right? But like
4.78.
4.78. So the film is the film, and they're both very similar. They produce in a very similar way. If Davis got all that run on draft night from the combine and all the buzz from the combine, Grant is going to get it this week too.
Mm-hmm.
Grant's going to have one of those, like, dude's 340 plus pounds, just should not move the way this guy does.
Right.
Period. So I would expect him to kind of go off. Is Will Johnson running with the toe? I don't know if he's running yet.
I don't think so. I don't think he is. It's hard to keep up with all the guys that are not.
I know. It's a bummer. Is Travis Hunter going to run?
I don't think so.
God, I would love to have seen that too.
He might, but I don't. I haven't heard anything, and I think that's the thing. I think because tomorrow afternoon is when it all begins.
Yeah, it's linebackers and D-line guys tomorrow, and the measurements are tomorrow too.
Yeah, and I think at some point tomorrow morning is when kind of the cutoff starts happening for if you're going to take part in drills and stuff like that. So I think we'll find out more tomorrow on more guys, because we're recording on Wednesday nights. So we'll see how that ends up going. But I did get a question. I sent out a tweet while we were recording, and I said, if you got questions, reach out to us, let us know. Got two things. One of them is from @HonoluluBlue90 from Laser. He was asking, or she was asking, can you and Scott mention which drills are most important for each position group on the podcast? We already kind of hit that to start the show, just kind of pinpointing certain things. A lot of drills kind of replicate for certain position groups, like receivers and corners kind of have a lot of the same drills that you're looking for, 3-cone drill, 40 time.
Yeah.
You want to see vertical, the vertical and stuff like that.
Yeah. And then obviously in their workouts, you want to see what they look like turning and, flipping hips and,
yeah.
And can you flip your hips and run in a straight line or run at a 45 and, and then get out of your pedal and come forward. You want to see all that stuff.
Yep. And then we did get a question from @GMart4041, Greg Martin. He says, I'm a sucker for draft trades. Could you identify a player, each of us, that you would like to see the Lions potentially trade up for, and maybe another one that you'd be willing to trade down for? So if you were to trade up, who would you trade up for? I think we're going to have the same answer on this one.
To me, it's Shamar Stewart.
Bingo.
Okay, cool.
So that would be the player. And then if you were to trade down, is there a player in mind that you would maybe try to target if you were trading down out of 28? I mean, kind of to your point of, over the last few weeks talking of like, if we were to trade from 28 to 38 with the Patriots, what are we looking at?
To me, that's the Ezeraku wheelhouse or the Josiah Stewart wheelhouse kind of range. One of those two guys. Where you feel like 28's a little too rich. Jared Ivey might fit that bill too. Like, is he a little rich at 28, but feel really comfortable with him at 34? Or 35, whatever it is? Yeah. I think some of those guys make some sense. What do you think?
The player I would go with is Deion Walker from Kentucky, the defensive tackle. You're looking at a 6'6", 6'5", 330, 340 pound guy that can easily play on, 2 downs, probably going to give you a little juice as a pass rusher. There's some limitations there, but he's going to give you some juice. He's from Detroit. Obviously, how he interviews will all matter, but if you were to trade down and get a guy that back in August, back in July, was labeled as a top 10, top 15 pick, and now is just completely fallen off everybody's radar. If you're able to trade down and get a guy like that who can help you, as we talked about a little bit last week with the Lions defensive line and, Aleem McNeil, will he be healthy? Will he be back in time? Then you look at, DJ Reader. He's on the last year of a deal.
Yeah.
He fell off a little bit at the worst time this past year. I think you get another guy in there, especially a player that's how big he is. I think it would be kind of a home run for you when you trade down and do it. So that's where I'm at.
That makes sense. It's good.
But all right, that's the questions. That's the show. I mean, that's the combine. I mean, it's you can't get into 300 plus players and talk about every single guy.
No, and then we'll wrap up. Like, we'll hit one up. We'll push one out Tuesday that wraps all this stuff up, specific for the Lions, players who we thought going in would fit, who might not anymore.
Yeah.
Or might not have had great great weekends kind of thing, or players who really solidified their status and makes you feel much more comfortable about their pairing with the Lions kind of stuff. We'll get that out Tuesday, and hopefully you'll see that on Wednesday.
Yeah. Yeah, so you guys enjoy the combine. It all starts tomorrow, Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. and again on Friday. And then over the weekend, it's at 1 o'clock Saturday and Sunday. So if you want to stay up to date on it, maybe you're going to be out of the house and you're not going to be able to watch, you want to stay up to date with it, follow both of us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft and at Bischoff_Scott. And of course, you can rate, review, and subscribe to the Detroit Lions podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other podcast platforms. We'll be back next week. We'll put a bow on the combine, and we'll start taking even more deeper dives into other position groups that the Lions may draft when we get to the 2025 NFL Draft. So he's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This has been Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast.